Hello, everyone, and thanks so much for tuning in to the always entertaining, always informative, The Boxing Authorities. Joining me at the desk, Mr. Luther Dupree Jr., Mr. Smokin' Jim Frazier, and my name is Claudio Relsano. We have a very special guest today, a Pittsburgh fighter who's a legend around here. Everybody knows this man, great with everybody. He's done a lot of things in the ring, a lot of things out of the ring, and that's Mr. Rod Salka. Rod, thank you so much for being on our show.
Thanks for having me, guys.
All right. Super featherweight, lightweight, light welterweight, 3 titles, the IBO Intercontinental, correct? Okay, WBC Latino, we'll get into that. The WBA and ABA titles 2 times. Now, he's won some belts, champion. First of all, before we get into all the belts, he did win the Latino. We'll get into that. How'd you get started in boxing?
I started boxing when I got back from the military. Basic training was 2001. Mm-hmm. I came back, didn't have any sports to play anymore, so ended up going to a gym in McKeesport that just to work out. Mm-hmm. They had boxing, started doing it, and just snowballed from there.
When did you know that you had it?
I'm still not sure.
No.
But so I just lucked. It was a string of fortunate events for me, I guess. So I started boxing there. Then I wanted to go to college, which was paid for, so I went to Cal U. Well, when I was at Cal U, Buzzy Garnick had a camp right there. So that was the closest gym, so I started going there. Well, this time, Paul Spatafor was world champion. Mm-hmm. He was using the camp. So now I'm around him pretty early in my career. And me and him became friends, started working out with him all the time. And around that time, had maybe a year in, now you have Raquan and Monty turning pro. They're right at my weight. So I had just a nice run there. You know, the excitement, like being around those kind of guys that early isn't normal. So just the excitement it gave me and the motivation to do it, that's when I kind of knew. I guess I was like, in my early 20s when I kind of knew that's what I wanted to do. I wouldn't say that I was ready then, but we just worked hard and just progressed. I mean, even through my pro career, I felt like I was getting better even towards the end.
24 wins, 6 losses, 4 knockouts. Nice record, Luther.
Yeah, so I mean, you've done some great things. We've seen you on Showbox, ESPN. Just talk about that experience. I mean, Pittsburgh back in the day was really known for boxing, but you've done some great things. I mean, I think you were that second wave after Spatafor, you, Monty, Raquan. Just talk about that experience. You had some good names that you fought as well.
So I learned a lot from those guys in respect to fighting local and then trying to get somewhere bigger, right? So you had Raquan and Monty that kind of paved the way. Raquan had that deal at Mountaineer. Right. They built up there and everything. And then I felt like, and I don't know the ins and outs of their back end of their careers, but I felt like if you signed, like, not that you can't sign local and still go big, but then you have to really trust that and trust those guys, because whenever you want to get signed by a bigger promoter, they're going to have to okay that, and they're going to have to be on board. Maybe they want a piece, maybe they want something, you'd have to work that out. And I wasn't comfortable. Like, the people we got now promoting shows here, I feel like love the sport. They got fighters signed, and I do kind of feel like those guys have the best interest. When I was coming up, I didn't feel that way. Maybe it was just me personally then being young. So we started my own promotional company, and the goal is to get myself wins. At this point, I didn't feel the need to be pressured into signing with a local promoter, because I sold more. I had more value than I cost. Okay. So when I'd fight on a show, that promoter's making money putting me on the show. Like, I sold way more tickets than the cost. So I felt like, why do I have to sign with you? You're already benefiting. Yeah. Whereas if I'm not, if I sell no tickets and you're taking the loss every time I fight to get me somewhere, then I owe you. Right. And I shouldn't leave or be able to do that. But I didn't feel like I should put somebody in a win-win that way. So I did it myself and promoted fights, got myself ranked. And once I got to that point, I was able to just go sign with a major promoter as a B-side to start.
So who'd you end up signing with? Have you
Golden Boy?
Golden Boy.
Yeah, I was with Golden Boy.
Big time.
Yeah, I signed with Golden Boy. I did that. They signed me to fight. Initially, it was Ricardo Alvarez, Canelo's older brother. So I fought him at the Alamo Dome. That was on a Show Extreme. So it was a Showtime Extreme main event, but it wasn't the main event on the card. So you go to Show Extreme, there's undercard fights. Right. Then Show Extreme has their main. Then it switches over to Championship Boxing. Okay. And the Championship Boxing main event that night was Broner Maidana. Okay. So that was Broner's first loss. I was actually right there ringside for that. I didn't get the decision in that fight And
You said that was Alvarez, Canelo's brother? Oh, that's okay.
I thought I won 8 out of 10 rounds.
It was Canelo's brother.
Yeah, Canelo's in the ring with him, you know.
Oh, God.
I won 8 out of 10 rounds. So, like, after the fight, the announcers and everybody were like, this kid got hosed.
Yeah.
They all came back in the locker room and told me I got hosed. So this is on Showtime at the time. And Desmond Harrington, I became randomly friends with at the same time. He was on Dexter, which was their biggest show.
Right.
So when he came down to the fights with me, he was in the corner. Everybody kind of knew him.
Okay.
And then when I lost that way, they all kind of felt bad.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Locke have it. At the same time, Mike Tyson's just starting to promote shows in Pittsburgh.
Right.
So I lose that fight in December, but then randomly he comes here on a Showtime fight in April the next year. So 4 months later, now they're offering me a fight on a Tyson card on Showbox main event against what's the Cuban kid's name?
Oh, yeah.
Alexei Collado.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So now I'm getting another shot. So now all these people from Showtime are back. Like, man, like 4 months later on a whole different card,
Right,
randomly
right.
in your hometown. Now you're on the main event, and they you could tell they kind of wanted me to win the fight, and it's in my hometown. So when you're watching that fight, normally the commentators will always gear towards the guy they want to win or the promoter's fighter. They'll they'll start talking about something else when the kid's winning that they don't want to win, and they'll come back. They're good at it, right? And they didn't do that at all, and I win the fight. So after I win that fight, everybody's super excited. And then that's when they end up moving me into the spot for the Garcia fight. And that was just off of right place, right time. I was with the big promoter. I was signed with them. Garcia. We got to build the wall.
Yeah, come on, man. No, listen, man. When I saw this, I said, man, Rod's fighting the Mexican and got to build a wall shorts on.
You were asking
He's the
for it.
biggest troll in boxing. How did that come about? You know you're fighting Vargas.
So
You said, let me put on these build-a-wall trunks while Donald Trump is talking about this wall.
in L.A. in front of
In
about
LA.
5,000 Mexicans.
You didn't want to get out there safe, man. Come on, man.
So actually, the one thing I'll say about nobody there, the internet hated that. The internet hated me. When I wore them there, I never had more people laughing, coming up, taking pictures with me. None of the Mexican people in person cared at all. Like, no, dude, like Mayweather wore a sombrero and came out with a mariachi band when he fought Della. It's part of the game.
Build a wall, sir. Come
It's
on.
part of, no, nobody said anything, but the internet. But I knew what I was doing. Like, I knew that would happen, and that was part of it. So we had a deal worked out. Vargas knew. I've known Bart. Like, I knew the kid I was fighting. Like, I was signed with Golden Boy. Like, they thought it was hilarious. So they all knew. But the reason is because there's so, you know how TV works. You have points. Like, point one, every point it goes up, that's your viewership. So we went off of what their normal viewership was and what their top was. And if they hit over that, I get extra money. And it was the highest rated.
There you go.
There you go. Build a wall.
Jimmy.
Build the ratings.
You know, one thing I've always admired about you is what you just talked about, the business end of things. You just didn't fight. You just didn't put all your eggs in their basket. Okay, you took control of things. When did you start thinking like that? And did you have like business role models or boxing role models that kind of put you in that lane?
I'd say I just learned from being
The hard way.
right next to everybody watching. You know, Michael Moore was great.
Yeah.
Helping me out. Paul was great helping me out. Just knowing that you have people that if you, maybe they didn't think about things, but if you go to them and explain it, that you're going to get an unbiased, honest answer. You know, and then they think about it and they'll call you back and say, well, what about this? Even Paulie Malignaggi, I've talked to him a ton over the years with different things that they got going on, and you just get an honest, pretty straightforward answer from these guys. But the build the wall thing wasn't easy. I knew I could make a lot more money, which was enticing, but I had to call all my friends first just to make sure they knew before I did it. I'm like, hey, just so you know, like, are you cool? Like, you're not gonna hate? And they're like, no. They thought it was, and I'm like, well, if everybody that cares about me doesn't care, then what do I?
You didn't care about me to begin with.
Then what do I? Yeah, people are gonna love you no matter what you do.
You get a lot of hate mail.
People are gonna hate you. Gonna hate you no matter. Oh my gosh!
I know you got a lot.
Every time that fight replays, I know because my inbox, my inbox will blow up. I have some of them saved. I printed some of them out. Had them on my wall and stuff. Yeah, but it's funny.
All right, now the Danny Garcia fight. One, what did you think about Danny Garcia before the fight? I know that was a huge fight. Danny's still going now and in line for another big fight.
Yeah.
What did you think about Danny as a fighter, and we
mean-
know his dad is wild. But-
Yeah. I mean, I fought him in the amateurs, too. I fought him in the Golden Glove finals the one year at 132 pounds when he was number one.
Oh, wow.
I fought him at Heinz Field, Jimmy Spedek. Like, I thought I beat him thought I beat him pretty easy. I lost a split decision. You had two
Okay.
Philly judges and two Pittsburgh judges. And the three Philly judges had him, But I thought I won. But from that moment, I mean, you got to understand, he was a professional, didn't have to ever work,
Right.
had money behind him,
Yeah.
and had all the McGuire and Sosa stuff behind
Yeah.
him. You know what I mean?
Oh,
Like
dang.
all the way up. I won't name names.
Wow. Okay.
I won't name
Nice.
names, but I was in Vegas multiple times with people coming up to me saying, "Hey, we can get you on this program. We can get you on this plan. Here's all this stuff that we can get." And I'm like, "Dude, well, what is this?" Like, because I never heard of this stuff before.
Yeah.
And they're like, the guy's a strength and conditioning coach, but he's also a chemist. He went to school for chemistry.
The cream in the clear.
Right. So it's like, do I want to do this and then not know? I mean, there's no test for these
Right.
things that you're putting in your
Wow.
body. But fighters, man, they're different. Like they never had nothing. So, and I don't know that that's for sure what he was doing. I just know who all these people were with at that level, and you're just a different person. Like, and there's no way anybody was working harder than I was. I never left the camp.
Okay.
Like for that whole year, so October 2012, I fought a 10-round fight out in Green Tree out there, 10-round fight, and then December I fought Alvarez 10 rounds, April 10 rounds against Collado, August 10 rounds against Garcia, November 10 rounds against Clay. So I had 5 10-round big fights, TV fights in 13 months. So I never, and even the year leading up, I never left the gym at all. So there's no way somebody was in better shape than I was. And I'm watching Danny's social media, and he's out with his rap group at the club. I'm sure he's not drinking or anything, maybe he is. I don't know, but he's out. He's doing these interviews. I'm like, dude, I'm in jail right now. There's no way this man's in better shape than me. The difference is I was really a 30-pounder. I had just fought at basically 130 against Collado in April, and I didn't know about the Garcia fight till July, beginning of July. Well, end of June, beginning of July. So I had about 6 weeks to get ready I was at 30 before that, 30, 35, 40, and then it was a catch weight.
Okay.
So, I mean, Danny's probably walking around at 65. I was walking around at 42 back then. So when I walked in for the weigh-in, I didn't even have to cut weight for the weigh-in. So he was going to be the bigger, stronger guy. And I just needed to move and box. And to be fair, I could have, if my goal was to go 10 rounds and not get caught, I could go 10 rounds. But if your goal is to win, you're gonna get hit. You know what I mean?
Chance, yeah.
And I should have honestly, in hindsight, I had a chip on my shoulder with all the media being so negative for that fight that I wanted to prove something, and I should have just boxed to not get knocked out for maybe 6-7 rounds. Maybe you steal a round or two here. Because as that fight goes on, the pressure for him to stop me goes up, and then that's when you make a mistake or you start reaching, and then maybe I can win a couple rounds. But either way, I don't think I get the decision because I don't think that I was just size wise and skill wise right at that time to steal a decision, especially that night. He was sharp that night. He was pretty sharp that night. I've seen him look bad. The Herrera fight, he wasn't. He was off, but that fight against me, he was kind of on point. If he has a bad night and I have a great night, I can make it look like Herrera made it look maybe in that fight. But even still, are you going to get the nod?
Right.
But it was a win-win for me. I mean, we got paid really well. I didn't miss out. I was supposed to fight Monty a little earlier. We still fought him after. And I felt like that helped me out because it was August 8th, I fought Garcia. It was 90 days later, I think almost exactly, I fought Monty. And, that was a great fight, had the win. So I thought after that, I'd be right back. After that, I went to Golden Boy. I was like, listen, 130. I'm not playing this up short, come on. And they never got me another. Well, they told me we've never seen you make 130 exactly. So I fought at the Meadows.
Yeah, I remember.
In 2015, that kid that I stopped, they took him on our stretcher. I made 129. I go back to him. I'm like, here. At that time, I was ranked number 2 at 130 after that. And they didn't give me a fight for 3 years. So now I got kids, I got a job, and
Yeah.
everything else. And then they give me 6 weeks for Vargas.
Jeez.
That's why I was like, let me just make some money here.
Right.
I didn't. I mean, if I'd have felt good going in the ring, I could have maybe won. If I'd have fought Vargas 3 years before that, no doubt I'd have beat him. But they know
it's going to be 3 years.
Yeah.
But they know what they're doing. Like they give you 3 years, 6 weeks to jump in. I wasn't really training. Like I weighed like 165 when I got that call, so I had 6 weeks to lose 35
So
pounds.
it was like a fat camp.
Yeah.
So now all right, explain to reviewers, what's the difference between a fat camp and a regular camp?
Well, if you haven't been fighting or training or anything, and you come into 6-8 weeks and you got to lose the weight, then the camp becomes about losing weight,
Right.
And it was worse for me because I never was really out of shape. You
Right.
figure I wrestled 127 in high school, 125 ends up 127. I wrestled at my senior year of high school, so that was 01. I'm still 2015, 14 years later making that, but my body's not the same. So when I was
Right.
165, I'm 165 now. So this is what I looked like.
Oh, jeez.
And I had to lose 35 pounds. It wasn't like I was just fat.
Right.
So I had to like get rid of muscle. I had to get rid of, we were running 10 miles. Like we were
draining, too.
That's
we were
draining,
doing
yeah.
a lot. We were doing a lot. And the worst part is having to fly East Coast to West Coast, get off a plane, and they know what they're doing because I do the same thing here for people whenever I have fights. I'll let that kid sit at the airport a couple hours, pick him up in a bus, make him drive with everybody else to the hospital. He don't need meds, but he's gonna sit in that bus, wait for them a few more hours. Now he's got a 3-hour drive. Instead of flying him into the airport right next to the venue,
Right.
it would have been a little more. I fly him into LAX, got a 3-hour drive. So now he's on that bus, 3-hour drive. By the time he gets there, he's got to lose weight for the weigh-in tomorrow. The gym's closed.
They know what they're doing.
Gym's closed. So now you gotta turn the shower on in your hotel room like you're a high school wrestler with a sauna suit trying to lose weight, and while that kid that you're fighting is number 2 in the world. He's got his whole team, his whole setup. And we do that. I mean, the same thing when I'd fight in Pittsburgh. When I made 130 against that Puerto Rican kid, he had the same disadvantage.
Well, I'm at the Meadows for the weigh-in, and you came in and you looked dead.
I look like a strong crackhead.
I mean, I was praying for you, brother. I ain't think you made weight and you had the IVs in your car.
Yeah.
And the next day for the fight, I compared him to Muhammad Ali versus Cleveland Williams because, he was the best fighter I've seen since Muhammad Ali beat Cleveland Williams. Nobody could hit him, and at that time, I thought he was the best fighter in the world that night.
That weigh-in, I weighed 129 Friday at 7 o'clock. By 1 p.m. Saturday, I was 158.
You almost threw up one grape. He was eating grapes. He could only eat them one at a time. Almost threw that up, man.
I was just trying to.
They said, "Don't give him 2 grapes."
I remember being in the car out front of the Meadows and being like, and having to like get myself ready to get out to walk in. Like even because I passed out in the sauna like a couple hours before that, and they had to pull me out of the sauna.
You look dead.
Yeah,
you
it
look
was,
dead.
it was rough. It was rough.
But we're going to take a quick break and come back and talk more with our great guest, Rod Salka, when we come back to the Boxing Authorities. Welcome back to the Boxing Authorities with our special guest, Rod Salka. Rod, you talk about Oscar De La Hoya. How was he and his team to deal with?
They were awesome, upfront, professional, easy to deal with. They didn't hold me back. They were upfront about who I could fight, when, and what they would do for me. And they did things they didn't have to do. Whenever I got the call for Tyson to fight Collado or even Monty, I was still under contract with Golden Boy. They could have said no. They could have stopped those fights from happening. Or they could have said they wanted a bunch of money or they needed to cut in on it to make it like less lucrative or like to mess it up, and they never did. It could have been because they're super nice. It could have been because they didn't care. But it didn't
Or you
hurt
could
them
have had
because
some pictures of all them pretty women
Yeah.
around.
because both of them, both of those fights that I had on Tyson's cards, I won. So they only really increased my value. So that's what allowed me. The Collado fight allowed me to get the Garcia fight. And then
Talk about that Monty Mason Clay fight.
Yeah.
Let's not.
Why not?
I
Why
never
not?
forgave Mike Tyson because that was Mike Tyson's thing. He felt like local professionals should fight each other.
And that's
my
what's wrong with
my
that?
2 good friends got to go to war against each other. I never
It's
liked
boxing,
it.
Jim. It's
I didn't
boxing.
I didn't like it.
Anyway, before Jim starts crying and whining, talk about that fight. 2 local legends going at it, and I guess you all have sparred and
Yeah, me and
from
Monty.
amateurs. So
Me and Monty probably had 1,000 rounds in the gym. He was
Okay.
training at Buzzy's that whole time I was in college.
Okay.
Up there, he was just turning pro. I was still an amateur.
okay,
But yeah, I mean, Monty always comes to fight. Like I've always said that about him. Monty sparred with everybody. He'll spar with amateurs that had a couple fights that up to the best pros in the world, and he never was like big in sparring. Like he's not a guy like you'd spar with Monty and think, oh man, I could.
right.
Like I could get him, or like I could do this, I could do that, because he's not, he's not really trying to kill you all the time in sparring. Like maybe at times, and but when he fights, he's coming to fight. He gets
Right.
himself worked up. Everybody got mad at him about the interview on Channel 4 where he came at me, but that's how he is.
Right,
You know what I mean?
right.
I didn't take offense to that,
Right,
but I'm
right.
not gonna feed into it. Like you're not getting in my head. He thinks he's like a little Tyson with that intimidation. But that's what he's getting. I think it's less for me and more for him.
Right,
and we
right.
were friends. So for Monty, he had to make himself hate me to want to beat me up, because like he doesn't want to beat me up. I was his friend. So like for him, that's what it was. For me, it's just I mean, if Smoking Jim wanted to sign a contract,
During that time that you mentioned Monty, Quan, yourself, Spadafora, I mean, that was a really nice time in Pittsburgh boxing. You ever think we'll see that? And obviously, we did a special. One time we were just doing, we were just going to talk about Pittsburgh boxing history, but there's a huge
history,
boxing
right.
history, and you're a part of it now, of course. But do you ever think we're going to see 4 or 5 guys like that again?
yeah, I don't see why not. I mean, it's just you got to get. There's all kinds of fighters here. I mean, I'm really not in touch with all of the amateurs and everything like that, but I know there's some talented fighters, and people peak at different times too.
Do they have
so-
the commitment like you guys have?
Right. I mean, that's the biggest thing. I wasn't the best amateur we had around here. I was a really good amateur. I won the Golden Gloves a bunch, but I wasn't the best, out of the bunch. And then we turned pro. I wasn't the best out of the bunch. But people fall off. I kept improving.
Exactly.
Because I was working.
Right,
The work ethic is huge. And it's not an easy thing to do when you don't know how it's going to pan out. It's not like somebody says, hey, if you put in all this time, I guarantee you this, or like this is where you end up. It's not that. You're putting all that time and effort in hopes. And the reason I did it was you only get to live one time. And if I want to go be a lawyer, or if I wanted to run a sales company, or if I want to be, I can do that when I'm 60.
Right,
If I
right.
wanted to be a professional boxer, your
You gotta do
time
it
Windows
now.
closed.
yeah,
Small
you
window.
gotta pick up the pace on that. Put yourself around. Don't be scared to put yourself around people that are better than you all the time. Don't be afraid to be the worst one in that gym. You should always be the worst one in the gym, or you're in the wrong gym. You know what I mean?
That's a
And
good
then
point.
eventually you're gonna get better. You don't be the best person in your local gym and then post on social media every day.
Well, see, that's what I think. You see the attitudes different today than you guys.
Well, social media, I think it's all about appearance, and reality isn't as important.
Okay.
You
Now,
know,
is
so,
the
and
hungry there?
it's very easy to look like you're doing a lot
Right.
if you post it, and then it gives people.
False
It makes it
sense.
worse, because then they're terrified. They're never going to really do it, because now if they fail after they did all that, it's tough.
Speaking of
Ryan
social,
Garcia.
speaking of social media, Jake Paul,
Yeah.
he's got pay-per-views. He's doing all this. As a former boxer, what are your thoughts about Jake Paul and the rise of the celebrity boxing? Last show we just had Le'Veon Bell and Peterson.
I just
fighting.
saw it. Yeah, I just saw that. I watched that.
So what are your thoughts about this whole?
I can't believe they
Jake
did that
Paul?
to Adrian
Yeah.
Peterson, man.
Hey,
But I think it's good. Change
Okay.
it up. You have these influencers now that have a lot. They have access, right?
Right.
You have social media. It's kind of cool to see how it plays out, because anybody can do a pay-per-view now.
Yeah,
It's not what
yeah.
it was. Like when you heard pay-per-view back when we were younger, it was like
Big time.
Tyson,
Right,
Holyfield,
right.
like somebody big. Lennox Lewis is fighting. Like it's a big fight. Like now, people will put up I'm fighting on pay-per-view, but it's like, you're doing it yourself with the people from Best Buy in your
Right,
local
right.
hometown,
That's how Logan Paul and
which is
KSI
fine,
first
which is
started, right?
which is 100%
On YouTube,
okay.
yeah.
But if you have 1 million followers and you can get 10,000 to buy your $20 pay-per-view, and that fight only costs you 20 grand to do,
You're making
you're doing really well, and then you can build off that. But you have to be willing to fail publicly,
right.
and they are, like Jake Paul is. He's in control. Like Anderson Silva holds that dude 108.
46,
Right,
47.
he can fight.
And
Like
fight.
people are gonna want to see it. He's picking the right guys.
Right.
You know?
Exactly.
And he's working really, really hard.
And
This
he's
is what-
staying away from the boxers. You know, he may say he's
smart.
going to fight
he
a
might,
boxer
he
and
might,
back out.
to be honest, he might be able to beat them. Like
Thank you.
my thing with this is there's some things that you need to be a professional boxer because it's not like you're getting a paycheck every Friday.
Mm-hmm.
When you're a fighter coming up, you got to work.
Yeah.
You're working a job, and if you're to the point where you're not, you made it.
Right.
Unless you get someone to pay you, and when you do that, they're paying you so that you can just train.
Right.
That guy's taking 33 1/3. Your trainer takes 10. Cutman takes 2. Uncle Sam takes 30. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
man.
like,
Break it down.
right. So now what you're doing is you got these guys that can cut all them out.
Yeah.
Right? Like you don't need all that. And what Jake Paul has is he never had to work it. He could just train.
Right.
The best supplements, the best trainers. Doesn't have to go to work all day.
Right.
So he can cut down that learning curve. You know, like exponentially cut it down. If you had that time, I mean, in a couple years, you can get pretty good at fighting. And if during that time you're picking guys that you want to fight, like let's not act like these guys aren't tough guys. Like that Woodley, tough guy, man. Like Jake Paul's getting better. If Jake Paul went and fought a guy that was number 40 in the world, that guy's working a job.
Right.
You know what I mean? So now when he calls that guy up, you know what he's going to do? We know all these people I'll know that guy just had an ankle injury.
Right.
And he's getting better. And I'm going to give him 8 weeks. I'm not going to give him 8 weeks. So if I know I'm going to call you to fight, you're not turning it down. This will be more money than you ever made in your life. So guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to train for 2 months to fight you before I even call you to tell you you're fighting me.
Exactly.
Then I'll call you, tell you to fight you. You're overweight. I know what you're weighing. I know what's on the scale because the buddy in your camp's telling me because I just gave him
Right,
$1,000.
right.
You know what I mean? So like now, but the media is like, oh, these guys aren't dumb. There's too much money not to do your due diligence, and good for them. Good for them. I hope more people start doing that. You know,
Exactly.
You talked a lot about some different things that the fans don't know about, some behind the curtain things. If you were, let's say, commissioner of boxing right now, what are some of the things you would do different, change?
You mean for Pennsylvania?
Oh, well, Pennsylvania.
If we had a federal,
overall,
if we had a federal
Go
commission,
with that. What are some of the things you don't like? And
the only
what
things
you-
I don't like is it's just a lot harder and more expensive if you're from the U.S. to get yourself in a position.
Oh, really?
So what you have is like indentured servitude happening. Like, so you get people here that can
Break
get
it
sports
down. Jim
visas.
don't understand that word.
So you can get.
So you're talking about teeth. You said dentures.
So what they'll do is they'll go get these kids in other countries, like third world countries, and they'll be out in the dirt hitting a bag hanging from a tree working out or whatever, and they'll just there's no oversight down there. So you don't even have to probably even have a fight. You could just foul stuff with the local guy that's your buddy that you just made that rule, got him an email maybe, and you said these guys fought. So now that guy has a win. Now he has 2 wins. Now he has 3. Now there's actual fights happening in like a chicken pen somewhere down there. And now you can get somebody to 30, 20, 30 and 0. And now by that time you hope they can fight a little bit. But now once you did that for no money, you get them a visa here and put them on a top rank card for $50,000. How much you think that kid's getting for that? There's nobody looking out. There's no Muhammad Ali act down there.
Right.
So what do you think he's getting? They probably gave him $1,000. Wow. That dude just made 49, or maybe they give him 5,000 and like he's pumped. But you know what I mean? Like these guys.
Is that what they did with Adrian Peterson?
So
15,000.
So in the U.S., it's good because you have rules and regulations, but we can't regulate every country. So it's really difficult for fighters here. I mean, all my fights were almost all in PA. Which is strict, like Greg Serb's, no nonsense. And good, you should be. You want to take care of people, and you want to be fair and everything. But it's not like that everywhere.
First time I heard somebody say good and serve in the same sentence.
Hey,
Some people think it's a little extreme. I've heard that.
maybe the thing I always respected about him was he's pretty consistent.
Yeah.
So if you know how he is, and you know who you want to fight, you don't tell Serb that that's the guy you want to fight first.
Right. Okay.
Maybe you go to him after he throws the first 2 down already, and then go to him with that guy. You know,
Is that good though? Because there's some, we won't mention states, but there's some states that you'll just
West Virginia,
West
Indiana.
Virginia's wonderful.
Kentucky, yeah. And I mean,
Because it can hurt the sport if it's a mismatch and somebody gets hurt really bad.
Or you could build your record up real good in West Virginia
Yeah.
too.
Who gets hurt, man?
Yeah.
Come on.
yeah, I mean, at the same time, if you're getting in the ring, if you pass the neuro, if you have to pass like a physical, and you're getting in the ring with like me, and you never fought before, maybe it's a hard lesson learned.
Right. Hey, listen, you said you spent some time around Adrian Broder.
Yeah. Yeah.
AB.
How good is he as a boxer? And man, he's come on some hard times, had to pull out a fight.
Yeah.
What's AB like?
I always got along
Okay.
with Adrian. He made a lot of money off of his personality.
Yes,
And I mean, he could fight. Don't get me wrong.
yeah.
He was a monster at 30, but that weight was unsustainable. Then he went
Right.
up, won titles, all these different weights. Once he got up to a higher weight, I think it was just more difficult because his output wasn't there, and he was a smaller guy. So I think it was difficult, but he still was right there, won fights, was able to keep people engaged, almost a more aggressive mini Mayweather with making people. A lot of people wanted to watch him fight to see him lose too.
Right.
Right.
And you can only do that and lose so many times before people stop watching.
You think he can come back, or what do you think? You think he
I
can
mean,
make the dedication
I'd
to come
watch
back?
him. Yeah, I haven't spoke to him in a while.
Okay.
But
They
yeah,
got
I would-
antidepressant medicines for him and stuff.
Oh, all right, Dr. J.
What about boxing overall today? Your thoughts on it, and how like we were talking earlier about the Anthony Joshua who lost 2 in a row fighting Fury.
Yeah.
But what are your thoughts on boxing overall today? The way it's run,
think-
the fights that are fights, and the fights that aren't happening.
I think boxing is as big as ever. It just doesn't seem like it here because we don't have that person driving it. I mean, you could honestly probably say Jake Paul is more in the
Can
driver's
you
seat now.
replace him every week?
It's just like I don't love
Biggest ever.
I
boxing, brother.
don't love it, but I mean the reason you see it when Tyson was here, you saw all these kids in the gyms coming up. Hagler, Hearns, Leonard, like all these kids coming up wanting to be like them, and we had those guys. We don't really have any of those guys anymore. Deontay Wilder didn't do it. Wasn't able to get that attention in that press.
That's
But you had the Klitschko's and then right into Fury from Lennox Lewis. Boxing in Europe and overseas has never been bigger. There's so many kids getting involved.
Luther talks about
Mark this
Chisora.
tape. Mark this tape, man. He's
In the UK.
Luther mentions Chisora
In the
with
UK
12
in the UK,
losses.
yeah.
Chisora,
Right,
right?
Chisora.
And they pack the place. Luther
Yeah.
always bangs on that. He's right.
Yeah, the UK loves boxing.
They
well
do.
more than
Holyfield
US
had
right
10
now.
losses, and it was always
But like for
popular.
me, but Holyfield's Holyfield. I do complain a lot about baseball. It's not coached well. It's not played well. There's no personalities. So in my opinion, it's really sinking.
I don't know,
Boxing.
I seen that closer for the Mets coming out to that trumpet every
Oh, yeah, he's a little different. There's a few guys.
pretty
But
cool.
baseball
Yeah, I
won't
like that.
allow you to be a personality. Plus, a lot of these guys are
Right.
boring anyway. And plus, the game itself is uppercut, strikeout, home run. But boxing, compare that, let's say, to when you first came up. You came up at a great time. You mentioned Tyson. You mentioned Leonard, Hagler, Hearns. Compare that to then, now. But the attendance is great.
Yeah,
The
those
tennis is
guys came up different too. I mean, everything was my dad's generation mentality is different than my generation.
Right,
Every generation, as things get easier, we get a little mentally weaker. You know what I mean? Those guys were just meaner guys.
Hungry.
Tougher.
Like now, I think we act mean. I think a lot of these guys act mean, but I don't know how mean everybody is. Not to say that's not out there, but Tyson sold that. Leonard and Hearns didn't like these guys didn't like each other.
That's right.
You know what I mean? Like they didn't, and that makes you want to watch. Like if you know two people, like when you watch me, how big was that fight here? And I get it was Pittsburgh and it was me and Monty, but like
huge,
people
yeah.
wanted to see that fight because
Right.
it was like cross town and. He didn't like me, and we didn't like you, and that was a big deal. Now imagine that, like on a world stage.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You get two guys that like are really gonna fight in the 80. Everybody's gonna tune into that, and you can tell the difference when it's like fake, and when it's not fake. And it's fighting's never gonna go away. Boxing's never gonna go
Sweet
away.
science.
I think it's doing great. And
Yeah.
it's always packed.
Yeah.
But
it
one
is.
thing I want to talk about, when guys get busted for steroids, I hate it because you could go in there and really hurt somebody.
Yeah.
You're putting something illegal in your system. As a boxer, what do you think about it? I know you've seen it and you've mentioned it a couple times, man.
Yeah, I agree. I mean,
For a clean boxer,
in
what do
boxing,
you guys think about that?
In boxing, it's way more evil. It should almost be like a criminal offense.
Exactly. Thank
You
you.
know what I mean?
Yes.
Because it's like taking a baseball bat into a street. Like if you're fist fighting someone and you pick up a brick,
Right.
That's different, you know. So
Glove-
like,
I mean, from the gloves
right
to the steroid,
and
all
it's
this
just
stuff.
it's just kind of taking advantage of the fighters in a way, because
Yeah.
I believe there's a lot of pressure, and a lot of these guys, it's like, well, if I don't, what else am I going to do? Like, what am I doing when I'm done with this?
Right,
You know, they didn't go to college, they weren't doing this, they weren't doing that, so there's a lot more pressure, and I think it's almost criminal what's done to them.
Half the crime.
A lot of times, because these guys have so much money invested that they're pushing that on you,
Yeah,
and you
yeah.
don't know what that's going to do to you in 10 years, 20 years.
exactly.
You don't know what's going to do if you try to have a kid. So I think it's a problem, but the world's never going to be, if you want to have freedom, there's going to be people that are going to do the wrong thing with that freedom. There's people that are going to do the right thing. So do you just keep encroaching on that stuff, or do you just deal with it when you catch? I mean, you always got to try to catch them. You always got to try to be a step ahead, but you're never. If I have a test and I know what's on the test, I can get away with cheating.
Right.
So if there's a test you're giving me and I know what that test is, what's on it, that for every drug out there, there's 1,000 other ones that can do something similar or the same that's
So
not
he's
on that
basically
test.
saying, Luther, quit whining about it.
You're never gonna. You're
No,
never.
and he's saying he's not
right.
for it. I mean, yeah, there's
I mean,
chemists
they-
that are always in there whipping up something.
Yeah, there's always. Yeah, like I
One
mean,
step ahead.
I don't know how you beat that. You know, other than if you get caught, make the punishment.
That's what I'm.
Exactly.
That's
make
what
the
I'm saying.
punishment
Exactly.
something
You know,
bad, like
where
you're
a guy
banned.
like a test negative like a Canelo gets 6 months.
Like
Bad meat
But
in Mexico.
baseball, in baseball, like,
He would have
Vargas. You know, when I fought Vargas, you know, he's tested positive twice. You know, I fought him the main event that night, and they didn't drug test us.
Oh wow.
See, that's what I'm saying.
No
But like
drug
Andrew
test.
always says,
No
somebody
drug
can
test.
actually
I was like,
baseball, you just
I
get
was
a
like,
few
come
more
on,
home
man. Main event on ESPN, no drug test.
So how does that work?
Like,
I
come
mean,
on,
How
guys.
does that work? So if there's no drug test, you say, oh no, we want to have drug. How does it
Then
work?
you won't get the
I'm
fight, you
not
won't
the
get the money,
commission.
right?
They know,
Thank
come
you.
on,
So
they know
it's
what
just
they're
the
doing. Yeah.
commission.
Am I right? Then you
Yeah,
won't get
nothing
the
I could
fight.
do. I just was like, I just looked at him like, come on. They just stuck something in him right before he walked out.
I agree with you. Like in baseball, you're gonna hit a few more home runs, but you're not gonna hurt anybody. In
Right.
boxing,
Boxing,
you can, that's
yeah.
just as bad as loading them up with loaded
The
gloves, right?
suspension should
Yeah.
make it so bad
Yeah,
nobody.
No,
wants
it's
to
not.
cut.
Penn
No,
Rose.
it's, no, it's not,
that
Claudio.
that was the crazy
No,
thing.
it's not.
Remember Antonio Margarito with the loaded gloves.
the
remember?
loaded gloves,
And
right.
he beat up Cotto, but they never caught him. And then when he got caught, it was
Nazem
Nazem
Richardson
Richardson
caught him.
before the fight.
Before the
So
fight.
since he didn't commit the crime yet, he got almost a pass.
Right.
If he'd have got caught after the fight, criminal.
Right.
But I'm like, bro, come on, how's it not still like? That's
Exactly.
like premeditated murder,
Right.
but you missed. But you missed when you shot at him. You know, are we still gonna just let you go? Like you still just get probation? Come on,
Exactly.
like,
I think the rules for breaking, for steroids, for all this stuff.
yeah. Panama
it's too
Lewis got
soft.
kicked out. Jeffrey
Forever.
Resto got kicked
Forever.
out. Yeah, they got.
You know, one thing I always again admired about you was the business end of things. When you retired, when you always had something going on. Tell us
Smart
about
guy.
when you were done boxing with some of the things
Smart
you got
guy.
involved
Went to,
in.
he's like me, a graduate
Cal
of
thing,
KLU.
we're worried about
It
that.
only took me 14
Yeah, so-
years to get my degree.
Yeah. So now I mean,
don't
I have.
have
You were
any degree,
preparing.
Jim. Yeah.
I always say, you know, you prepared yourself for when you were done in the ring.
Yeah, I mean, I always knew I was gonna do something. I mean, we started an insurance agency. I still have. I'm VP of operations for Lifestyle Marketing. We're like the biggest installer of residential solar in the state. So my buddy owns it. Met him through boxing. Come to the fights. Met him at an event after, and he's like, we stayed in touch. So when I had 2015 or 16, I was working at Solar City as a regional manager doing solar. Went to New York for a little bit. Worked for another company called Vivint. They were huge. And then came back here. We got solar to come here. We got a warehouse, couple offices. So we're running that. I mean, we're year over year since 2019. We've 3x'd our business. So yeah, we're like next year if we're not the fastest growing company in Pittsburgh, we'll be in the top 3.
Wow, that's
Wow, good
Yeah.
stuff.
It's
Yeah.
today.
That's what I said, always-
It's today dress down day.
Yeah, yeah.
When you own a company, you can dress down whatever you want, Jim.
That's one thing I've always admired about a lot of athletes, like Magic Johnson, we talk about Greg Norman, a lot of guys, Roger Staubach, Sugar Ray Leonard, I know he don't like, but there's a lot of guys who I always admired what they did outside of the ring, and that's why I say I always
Very
followed
good
what
point.
you did. And are you involved in boxing in any way, and what's next for you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm still enjoying the solar stuff, working with my friends there. Like I said, my friend owns the company. Enjoying that. Got 2 kids, enjoying. As far as boxing goes, we're starting to work. He actually just got back in the gym within the last month after labrum surgery. We're gonna turn little Teddy Mercandra pro. I'm gonna start getting him
Teddy's
some
there.
fights, try to get him,
Oh,
try to get him built up.
Yeah.
So I've been talking and working with with his dad. So we're gonna get him rolling here soon.
As a promoter, trainer, manager, what?
I'm gonna
Corner?
be more of a manager.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm gonna be more of like an advisor manager. Try to work some fights and see how we can get him as many fights as we can quickly.
What weight is he? What do you see him at?
He's
as
gonna
a
be
pro?
probably 35, 40.
135.
Like
Okay.
He can
Yeah.
still make that. Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
All right, we have some of your highlights here.
Do you miss it?
Iron Mike.
Yeah.
What do you miss? Nobody can miss sparring and the working. But
Yeah,
the fight itself.
Just the fights
Gym rat.
itself, yeah. The fight. I like the lead up in the training most of the time. You know, I was just telling my wife this yesterday because my daughter getting into this stuff. I'm like, she's like, well, if she does too much, if we have her 3 days into this, maybe she'll get. I'm like, it's the rule of thirds. You know, a third of the time when you're training, you want to feel good. A third of the time you want to feel okay, and a third of the time you're going to feel like crap. And if any one of those, if you're feeling too good too much, you're not working hard enough. If you're feeling like too much, you're working too hard. And if you're feeling okay, you probably need to pick it up a little bit. But you should have about the third of the time. You know, so just because you feel bad a couple of times, you're not quitting.
Man, you sound like a gateway grad.
And it's the same thing. And it's the same thing with
Stop.
boxing. But it's just nice being there in the back before the fight, hearing everybody out there. Walking out to the ring, getting in
Well, I
there
know
and
you get a
being
lot of, we see each other a lot at the
this
celebrity
was a
golf
horrible
events, and a lot of people still enjoy you and they respect you, and I like seeing that.
Ernie Sharif in there
Yeah,
refereeing,
that's
the
Ernie,
legend.
that's Ernie.
Yeah.
Ernie's man.
Ernie's a good guy, great ref.
Nobody moves like him in the ring, man.
Right.
The way he moves, he
Still.
still
Right.
can move, man.
Still, yeah.
Well, we're going to go to our popular segment, the boxing mailbag. You can continue to send your great comments and questions to boxingmailbag@yahoo.com. You can also send them to my website at claudiorelsano.com. Okay, this is for all three, but you're going to be included in this, Rod. Pedro from New York City, do you guys think it's better for boxing to have one dominant heavyweight champion who defends his belt for years, or a variety of champions so nobody gets tired of one guy?
One dominant heavyweight, I think, builds the sport, and everybody's trying to come after him. I like that.
Like a Tyson
Like a
has.
Tyson.
Your thoughts?
I think somewhere in the middle there. You don't want too many, but that big dominant one needs to have an adversary that people want to
Yeah.
see fight that guy.
Right.
And, you know, it's gotta be entertaining. So, but I agree.
Jim?
Well, as long as you don't have a Muhammad Ali that fought bums from 74 to
Jim,
78
Jim,
to keep
stop.
the title.
The greatest.
but,
Get out of
I'm
here,
going to
Jim.
tell you something that you'll
Stop.
appreciate. Andre the Giant, when we were growing up, he would be here for a while, then he'd go to the AWA for a while, he'd go to
Right.
the end of, why? Because they didn't want people to get tired of him.
Yeah.
So maybe in boxing, unless you were a Tyson who just dominated people.
Maybe he just made them look like bums, Jim.
Yeah, that's right.
yeah.
That's right.
Better not talk
Yeah.
to Roy about that stuff.
This is,
Everybody says that about Roy too. Like, oh, he never fought anyone. I'm like,
Roy
those
dominated.
guys are pretty good fighters. I mean,
If you look at the
he
list of
made him
guys
look
he fought,
average.
Yeah.
that's right.
Joe
Yeah.
Buckner,
Comment-
Evangelista.
Well, hey, he can't fight. Hey, we can go with Canelo. Am I
His
right?
resume was
Who's the guy?
outstanding.
Who's the guy they made the Rocky movie about?
Chuck Wepner.
Chuck
Wepner.
Wepner. Yeah, all he
Beyond-
knew
the
how to
Beyond
get him.
Bleeder.
But he
The
made
Bleeder.
money no matter who he fought. So fight the bums.
Comment from Tommy from Whittier, California. You guys have different guests on than the norm, and you guys don't ask the same old questions. Great show. Thank you, Tommy. We appreciate it. All three. Richard from Pittsburgh. Whatever happened to the Pittsburgh boxer, Ralph Tiger Jones? He was 32 with 22
McKee
knockouts.
sport, yeah.
His last fight was he lost to Ike Corte. I watched him fight a guy at the Station Square years ago, and the guy got like a diabetic thing.
I watched him fight somebody at the Duquesne's.
Whatever happened to him, do you know?
yeah, I think he's in. I don't think he's in great shape.
Oh, really?
Yeah, McKeesport. From what I heard,
nice record,
I
too.
haven't heard anything but him. Well, I know that Ike Corte fight was rough.
That was a
Damaged
tough
him,
fight,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I thought he would come back from that though, because he had a nice.
He was a nice
career.
fighter.
He was
Yeah,
a
he
nice
was.
fighter.
Fighters,
Yeah.
that was a tough fight.
All right. Well, as always, first of all, thank you, Rod, for being on the show. We've been
Rod.
letting us do this for a while. Great job. Great information for us. And as always, we hope you enjoy our show as much as we enjoy bringing it to you. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Boxing Authorities.